I am Rajiv Saxena, Associate Professor, Smriti College of Pharmaceutical Education, Indore. In today's video lecture, we'll discuss about the process of disinfection. Like we have discussed in our previous video regarding the process of sterilization. In that process of sterilization, we have studied that the sterilization is actually the process of complete removal of all the forms of viable microorganism from any sample. But if we compare the definition of sterilization with the disinfection, then what we will find that the disinfection is actually the process of destruction or removal of all the form of pathogenic microorganism from any inanimate object. So here the basic difference exists between the process of sterilization and the disinfectant. In case of sterilization, we are actually talking about all the viable form of any microorganism. But in case of the disinfection, here we are more concerned about the pathogenic microorganism removal from any inanimate object. Inanimate object is actually the non-living object. Now there is one more term which is closely related with the disinfectant, which is called as antiseptic. So if we compare the definition of the disinfectant and the antiseptic, then what we will find that in case of antiseptic, it is also again the process of destruction or removal of any pathogenic microorganism, but it is from the animate object or from the living object, like for example any cell. So there is three definitions. Number one is sterilization, that deals with the complete removal of all the viable form of the microorganism, whereas the disinfectant, which actually deals with the removal of the pathogenic microorganism from the inanimate object, and the antiseptic, that actually deals with the destruction or removal of all the pathogenic microorganism from any animate object. But there are certain chemicals which act as a disinfectant also and as well as the antiseptic also. Like for example, we can take the example of the iodine solution. Iodine solution is a disinfectant also and it is antiseptic also. So there are so many categories of the disinfectant are actually available. Like you must have heard about the phenol, you must have heard about the quaternary ammonium compounds, various halogens, they all act as a disinfectant. But in this first introductory video, in today's lecture, we'll discuss more on the desirable ideal properties of a disinfectant and also we'll study about various factors that affects the disinfection process. So coming to the first point, that is the ideal properties of a disinfectant. Now the first ideal property of a disinfectant, that it should kill all the microorganism in a very lower concentration at a very shorter period of time. So definitely when we are applying any disinfectant, especially in some pharmaceutical industries or especially in some hospital, then it is generally desirable that we cannot go for the application of very larger concentration. So it means we need to dilute the disinfectant, and if we are diluting the disinfectant, then its activity should not be reduced. And the time of exposure is generally not that much very high. So in a very shorter period of time, at a very lower dilution form of the disinfectant, the activity of the disinfectant should be very good. That is the first ideal property of a disinfectant. Now the next ideal property of a disinfectant is the efficiency should not be reduced in the presence of the organic matter. Now especially if we are talking about a hospital, then what we'll find that so many organic matters are actually available. Like you can find the presence of blood, feces, urine, etc. So if we are applying a disinfectant which is having a larger concentration of this organic matter, then ideally the efficiency of the disinfectant should not be reduced. Now the third property, it should not be toxic, non-staining and non-offensive in nature. Since we are applying these categories of the disinfectant where actually the workers are also available, doctors are also available, so it should not be toxic to them, and even it should not be toxic to the nearby animals. And after the application of the disinfectant, it should not leave any stain or color to the application area. And definitely it should not be non-offensive. Now it should not have a very objectionable odor, because then definitely it will not be tolerated by the person which are available at the nearby places. Now the next property, that it should have a reasonable shelf life. Definitely, if you are talking about the pharmaceutical industry or any hospital, so generally if you are purchasing the disinfectant for those particular areas, then generally the bulk purchasing is done. So if the shelf life of the disinfectant is very less, then definitely that bulk purchase process will be hampered, because generally the industries or the hospital, they generally purchase the disinfectant for the entire year. So if we are having a disinfectant whose shelf life is not that much, then definitely what will happen, that storage process is somewhat hampered. Definitely it will be hampered. Then it should have a good wetting property, because when we are applying a disinfectant to any area, then it should cover the larger surface area, so that the effect of the disinfectant can be applied, it can be felt at every area where it is applied. So the wetting property of the disinfectant should be very good. Now, it should not separate on standing, because if the phase separation will occur, then directly it will reflect the quality of a disinfectant. Then it should not corrode the instrument. If you are talking about a pharmaceutical industry, and if you are applying a disinfectant to such an area where large instruments are placed, like maybe it is made up of some stainless steel or any other metal, and because of the application of the disinfectant, if they are corroded, then definitely it will not be tolerated. So ideally, the application of the disinfectant should not corrode the instruments which are available in the pharmaceutical industry. Then it should be cheap and easily available. Yes, definitely, whatever the disinfectant we are using, because larger application of disinfectant is done in the hospital and even in the pharmaceutical industry. So the disinfectant should not be that much very costly, and it should be easily available around the year. So these are some of the ideal properties of the disinfectant. Now coming to the next point of today's discussion, that is the factors affecting the disinfectant action. Now, the first factor that affects the activity of a disinfectant is actually the concentration. Now, it is a general assumption that if we increase the concentration of any solution, then it is generally presumed that the activity will be increased. But it is actually not the case with the disinfectant. Like when we talk about the ideal properties of a disinfectant, then the first ideal property is it should be effective at a very lower concentration. Means dilution is generally practiced with the disinfectant. So if you are talking about the concentration, then definitely the activity, the relationship between the concentration and the activity in case of the disinfectant is not directly proportional. We can take an example of the phenol. Phenol is actually active at the concentration of 1%, and if we increase the concentration of the phenol from 1%, the activity of the disinfectant or the phenol is reduced. So the optimization of the concentration of the particular disinfectant is again a big task. Now coming to the next factor, that is the time of contact. Means if you are applying a disinfectant to any area, then what is exactly the time period for which we need to expose the area with the disinfectant. But the time of contact is also dependent upon the prevailing temperature, pH, concentration and nature of organism. If all these things are favorable, then definitely the time of contact will be less. Now coming to the next factor, that is actually called as the temperature. Again, here we can say that if we talk about the relationship between the activity of the disinfectant and the temperature, here we can say that it is having a direct correlation. If we increase the temperature, then definitely it is observed that the activity of the disinfectant also increases. Now this is actually expressed in forms of the temperature coefficient, which is called as a Q10. And again, if we take an example of the phenol, then what we'll find that if we increase the temperature by 10 degree, then the activity of the phenol increases 4 times. For example, if you are switching from 20 to 30 degree, then because of that increment of the temperature from 10 degree, the activity of the phenol increases 4 times. So here we can conclude that definitely the temperature also affect the activity of the disinfectant. Coming to the next point, that is actually the type, number and condition of the organism present. Means first we have to analyze from means the area where we are actually applying the disinfectant, it means in that area which type of microorganism are available, and with these microorganisms are available in which condition. Like for example, if the microorganism are available in its sporulitic form, then definitely the process of disinfection will be very that will not be very easy, because to kill these spores it is very again a very big task. Now the next point is the presence of organic matter and other inactivator, that we have also discussed in the ideal properties of the disinfectant, that if the organic matter like feces, blood, urine or any other organic matter is available, then definitely the activity of the disinfectant reduces. Ideally what we can say that in the presence of this organic matter, the activity should not be reduced. But actually practically it is observed that because of the heavy presence of the organic matter, then definitely somehow the activity of the disinfectant reduces. Now the next point is the pH. Definitely pH also affect the activity of a disinfectant. Again it is observed that at the pH between 6 to 8, the activity of the disinfectant is maximum. Now the last point, that is the surface tension. Means again it is somewhat related to the wetting property of a disinfectant. So ideally it is observed that if you are applying a disinfectant, then it should cover a larger surface area and it should wet the surface in which we are applying the disinfectant. So it is observed, if we take the example of the phenol, then it is observed that the surface tension of the phenol is less. So a very famous market product is also available, which is called as a Lysol. So that Lysol is having a cresol with soap solution. It means here the phenol is combined with the soap. So because of that application of the soap, because of the incorporation of the soap, then definitely the wetting property of the disinfectant can be increased. So these are some of the factors that actually affects the activity of a disinfectant, and these are some of the ideal properties of a disinfectant. It means whatever the disinfectant that we are choosing for your hospital, for your industry or for any other purpose. So before using that, first we have to consider about all these factors, because we know that in our pharmaceutical industries or in our hospital which type of conditions are available. So depending upon the conditions, we need to choose the different categories of the disinfectants. Thank you.